Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Merrimack School Board this Monday evening, October 20th, 2014. Would you rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. That takes us to item number 2 on tonight's agenda, approval of the October 6, 2014 minutes. Is there a motion made by Vice Chair Barnes and seconded by Ms. Guagliumi? Any amendments? Vice Chair Barnes.
Actually, it's kind of a clarity on page 2, line 79. I think it was said this way, but I just want to make sure it's right and I'm not wrong. They focused on response to instruction, and RTI has always been response to intervention in our conversations. In this context, is it supposed to be instruction?
They're really interchangeable. Our district has been using response to intervention.
Okay.
That's what it's known as. It is also appropriate to say response to instruction.
Okay.
So it's either one.
So the nomenclature is just depending on who you ask.
Right.
Okay, so we'll keep it as is. All right, we're going to page 7, line 307. And the line, Vice Chair Barnes stated that the department heads / principals need to be ready to explain. So this is the board is, and that's not accurate. It's 307. And then on page 9, line 393, it's the date is wrong. It's Friday, October 24th, 2014. Those are the 3 I had.
Thank you. Any other amendments? No? I had some. On page 1, line 8, if we could add the student representative's name to the excused party list. On page 6, actually, Matt, I would ask for you to help clarify the sentence that begins on line 250. In order to make up the $1 million shortfall in the tax rate, we are looking to reduce the school portion of the tax rate approximately $4.8 million. That's not what you said, is it?
I hope not.
I don't believe it is.
It's really in order to make up the, let's see, the $4.8 million surplus will partially make up for the shortfall in the adequacy money of around $1 million.
Got that right? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then on page 7, line 291, if we could just insert the words "to the superintendent" so that the sentence reads, "and provide guidance to the superintendent" from the collective comments. And then on line 320 on the same page, if we can just change the spelling to P-A-R-I-T-Y instead of P-A-R-O-D-Y. And then on page 8, line 354, after we talk about practicing lockdown procedures, if we could add a sentence that says, "in times like these, student security must be a concern," which was the point of that statement. And those are all the changes that I have. So with that, we'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favor of accepting the October 6, 2014 minutes as amended, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? 1. So that motion carries 4-0-1 with Board Member Schneider abstaining. Thank you all. And that takes us to item number 3, public participation. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board. All we ask is you step to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone looking to address the board under public participation? Seeing none, we'll close public participation and move to item number 4. Board's response to Merrimack Middle School intersection development, Chestnut Hill Properties. You'll recall at our September 15th meeting, we were presented a plan for a rotary intersection to extend Old Blood Road into Madeline Bennett Drive. The presentation was made by Ken Clinton of Meridian, along with Business Administrator Chevenel and Mr. Steve Keach. The board has had requested at that time 2 weeks to review the proposal, discuss it, and get input. And so tonight we are considering approval of that plan. Is there a motion that would be made from the table? Mr. Powell.
I make a motion that the school board has reviewed the proposal to relocate and upgrade a portion of Old Blood Road on the property owned by the school district, as shown on a plan entitled Chestnut Hill Cluster Subdivision Madeline Bennett Intersection Exhibit, and further identified as SK-C1 Sheet Number 6, prepared by Meridian Land Services Incorporated, dated February 11, 2014, that was last revised on July 31, 2014, aka the plan. And the school board does not object to the relocation or upgrade of such portion of Old Blood Road in accordance with the plan, provided, however, that the applicant honor its commitments that were made at the September 15th school board meeting, and furthermore that the applicant shall submit any and all detailed engineering plans for such relocation and upgrade to the school board for review and for comment by the school board's council, and its engineering consultant prior to submission of such plans to any agency, board, or authority with jurisdiction over such proposal.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Schneider, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes. The school district is interested in how this intersection is going to be set up. We have a vested interest in how the intersection is going to be set up because of the traffic flow in and out of the middle school. I want to say that I appreciate the time and the efforts that have been spent by all parties in coming together and meeting and achieving a consensus to get us to a point where the school board feels comfortable with the proposal as it's put out.
Thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Schneider.
I'd just like to add some clarity to the motion that Davis just read. When we say September 15th, let's make sure we put the year after that.
I thought I did. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
No, that's fine. It might have been written, but you didn't verbalize.
Is your microphone on, Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello?
We couldn't hear you.
Oh.
Yes, as amended.
But other than that, I agree. I mean, I think that the spirit of what we talked about on the 15th is what we all, at least I feel is appropriate, given the options that are there. So I support this as well.
Thank you. Further discussion? Okay. Seeing none, we will put the motion to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. That motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you, everyone. And that takes us now to item number 5, New England School Development Council, otherwise known as NESDEC, report regarding consolidation of the superintendent and special education offices. And I invite to the table, it's not too far of a trip, Mr. John Kennedy of NESDEC. Welcome again, sir.
Your light's not on.
Can you hit the button on the microphone? There we go.
There you go. Says push, right? Okay. It's nice to be back with you again, and I appreciate the opportunity to present information that we have gained through our research and our report. For those who were not in attendance at the September 2nd meeting, just briefly some information about NESDEC. The organization, New England School Development Council, has been in operation for over 65 years. We originated out of the Harvard School of Education. We are now an independent operating nonprofit organization. And our primary function is to help districts solve problems. And so on an annual basis, we have approximately, actually over 200 affiliates. We do approximately 240 enrollment projections on an annual basis for school districts. And we are involved in strategic planning, assisting districts with that, and tied to that also facility best use studies. So that is the information or the background information with regard to the organization. And next, you see the members of the NESDEC team. And Donald Kennedy is our executive consultant, and he is also responsible for developing most of our enrollment projections and demographic information. I worked on the project as the facilities consultant, and Arthur Betancourt is our executive director. Now, in terms of just giving you a brief introduction in terms of what took place, we were asked by the district, SAU 26, to develop a facilities best use educational study. And the goal of the project was to provide the district with an analysis of the feasibility of locating the central office and special services office in one of the currently existing public school facilities. And with this type of planning, it does provide an opportunity to gain a better understanding of the long-term future of each of the buildings, and also a guide to budget planning. I know you folks are heading down that road already, so hopefully this will be helpful in that respect. The scope of the project, first of all, we did enrollment projections for the district, and in working on that, we analyzed district and municipal records, the 2010 census relative to Merrimack, birth data, and information provided by the Merrimack Community Development Office and the Merrimack Chamber of Commerce. And I want to just take a moment and say that the folks at both of those offices were tremendously helpful to us and very willing to assist. And then beyond that, obviously, we wanted to study present and planned school programs. And in doing so, we also wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to visit all of the Merrimack District schools while in session. You may remember the last time I was here, I mentioned that I had already been to 3 schools, but they were not in session at that time. We did a return visit and were able to see each of the schools in session, which is tremendously helpful. And again, I would like to thank everyone within the schools for their cooperation, both at the administrative level. We received tremendous assistance from the superintendent's office, from Matt's office, and also from several of the admins, and as well as the building principals, all of whom were, they couldn't have done any more to be helpful. So we're very grateful for that assistance on the way through. Once we took a look at the enrollment information and the facilities information and developed a capacity analysis for each of the schools. We combined that, and based on that, we were able to consider a set of findings. And the findings gave us information which provides a sense of what would be the possibilities related to relocation of the central office and the special service office. This was what we were essentially requested to do into school buildings, into the school buildings. Now, this is important, and it's bolded. The findings are designed to serve as a catalyst for further analysis and discussion. I know that you folks have already discussed this over a period of time, but we feel that we are providing some additional information that we hope will be helpful. And so we hope that it will be a beginning point for future planning, finalizing planning along that area. Now, next we're going to talk about the enrollment projections and what we came up with there, and I will spare you. I'm not going to read all of these to you. However, if you take a look at the K through 12 column, okay, you can see that the projections, or excuse me, the history, the enrollment history over the period of time from 2004-05 through this year, 14-15, there has been a significant decline in enrollment and over that time period, and that is shown at the bottom here of the historical percentage changes column. And I know the school, this is difficult because I'm pointing and you folks are looking at that one over there. So it's a decline of 930 students over that period of time. Now, if you follow the 9 through 12 column, which says in historical enrollment in grade combinations, and you take a look, you can see that a good portion of that decline occurred at the high school and then at the middle school. If you take a look at the K through 4 numbers, you see that the decline there was not as significant over time, and that is because also there were some expansions that took place. However, the number is much closer to the 2004-05 number than we see at the high school or middle school. Okay, now we take a look at what does the future hold based on our analysis. And you notice, I'm going to take you right down to the bottom here, and you notice that we are projecting a decline will continue, but that the decline will be somewhat mitigated as compared to the last decade. And the reasons for that are many. We have, in talking to the Community Development Office, we have found, and you were just discussing it, that there has been an increase in planning for residential housing in the community. And the projects are, there are actually a few projects that are moving forward. And these are expected to, at some point in the near future, continue. There's Chestnut Hill, which you were just discussing. There is Edgebrook Heights, which is going, has not been approved, but is being considered, and that would be a mixed-use facility which would have the potential of several apartments and condominiums. And also another, Bowers Landing is another which was referenced in our conversations with the Community Development Department. And that would have about 50 single-family, either townhouses or condominiums that would be tied in. They would not be single-family homes, but they would be condominiums or townhouses. Now, this is important because you may recall in the last meeting where we were in attendance, we did very briefly mention the baby boomers. and the fact that they are what is considered to be a wild card in the demographics. And one of the key issues that boomers note is that a lot of them are considering downsizing. However, many of them also indicate that they do not want to have to move away from family, friends, medical, so on and so forth. So the fact that you may be seeing condominiums developing, some people would say, oh, or apartments. Some may say, well, those are not as likely to have school children as maybe a single-family home. But the fact is that they provide an opportunity for boomers to do exactly what I just described. And of course, when a baby boomer couple or a baby boomer moves from a empty nest home, they are typically vacating a 3 or 4 bedroom home, and who's going to move there? Usually it will be people with small children. Okay, so that's a factor that did influence our enrollment projections, and you see a somewhat mitigated decline in enrollments being discussed. Another factor is, and this I think would be very positive, in talking to the folks at the Chamber of Commerce, they have indicated that things since 2009 have almost completely reversed in terms of the business atmosphere in Merrimack. And they said that it is a very vibrant business atmosphere in the community, and we all know that if you have businesses that are doing well and possibly new businesses coming in, that has a tendency to bring in additional folks. Okay? So based on all of that, we have developed these enrollment projections, which still do show a decline. However, with our enrollment projections, we always caution, and especially in this case, want to emphasize that it will be very important for the district on an annual basis to talk to realtors, talk to that community planning development organization, talk to the Chamber of Commerce, and to keep a good handle in terms of what is happening in the residential market, because that does have a potential to affect school enrollments. Okay? All right. Now, this shows you just a graph which I think sort of tells the story of where we see things. And if I had shown you this first, I probably wouldn't have had to take up all your time talking about it. But it does show the decline occurred, and now we're anticipating through our projections that things are going to slow down in terms of decline and eventually level off as we get near the end of the decade. Okay? All right. So then we get to the capacity analysis. And with the capacity analysis, we get to this point, which I think is very important and we want to emphasize. We do this with school districts just to point out the times are changing and have changed. And so therefore, it's important we do a then and now analysis. And in that particular analysis, we note that the educational programs which were in place when many of the schools in New England and within this community were constructed back in the 60s, because that was when the boomers were coming into the school systems, those buildings were constructed to meet the needs of a different educational program. And so that is important. Many schools were designed when all the desks were in a row. Some of them actually were nailed or screwed to the floor, so you couldn't move them. And it was a different scenario. And so there have been many changes. There were very few areas for small group instruction. Very few students were identified as on IEPs, special education students. And so there has been a tremendous, tremendous change in the way that buildings are utilized. As a result of that, schools which at one time could have accommodated 600 students may now accommodate 500 or fewer because of the change in programming. So that's an important point that we want to emphasize. And then as we get into this a little further, and I'm not going to read these to you, but you can notice that classroom sizes have changed in the elementary level from between 500 and 600 square feet to up to around 900 square feet today. And you notice that there have been changes with kindergarten, with technology. There was none in the 1960s. Today, you know that there are computers in classrooms. We're talking about Wi-Fi accessibility throughout the schools. And by the way, you're doing an excellent job moving forward with that. We have seen some tremendous progress noted. And also computer labs, science labs developed, art and music were typically, back at that time, were provided through the classroom. And so now there are designated spaces for that, all of which, of course, require square footage. And we know that the library in school buildings has changed tremendously in recent years in terms of what it can now accommodate. So that's an example with the elementary. If you take a look, there are other areas, and let's take a look at this one, transportation. Some students were bused, but most walked to school. If our research indicates has been correct, it appears that an awful lot of students in Merrimack and in every community we go to now, they either are bused or they are driven to school. And that can create, as you well know, some issues with regard to pick-up, drop-off. And so that's a major change that's come about. And you can see some of the others listed. Now, in terms of junior high versus middle school, the middle school model calls for the students to be in sort of a home-based wing of a building. The different core subject areas are located fairly close together. Note again the difference in square footage. Note also that for middle schools now there is oftentimes a lab which is used for science. And you see that the same situation that we described earlier with regard to special ed classrooms. And then we go to the high school, and you're going to see essentially the same types of changes. And big change, science classes in the high schools used to be equipped with a space in the front where the teacher would demonstrate to the students. Today, the students are engaged in the projects. And so it's a very different setting in many high schools that we see. And also you notice the libraries in the high school, and often many of them will have access to numerous computers within the library so that you can bring your group of students in and you can work there. So, as we get into defining capacity, we ask every district the same questions. What are your class sizes, and so that we can use those in computing capacity? Now, we do not, we consider square footage, but architects in the state, and they have a different goal in mind usually, but they typically use square footage and turn that around to say, if the school has this many square feet, this is the number of students that you can accommodate. And that makes sense to a certain degree. However, we believe that you have to know what the programs are. What programs is that facility trying to accommodate? And so we take a different approach, and we try to base our capacity analysis based on existing programming and accommodating existing programming. So we also got this information, and we do this with every district, from the district with regard to grade level class sizes. And obviously, it's very important to understand, 25 at a high school level is for core curriculum, and there are instances where that is exceeded. And everybody understands that. There may be some classes that will run in the 26, 27, even 28 range at high schools. Okay? The NEASC standards look for 25 and under in most cases. They understand that there may be a few that we'll go over, but they look for that in most cases. We did an analysis of the high school master schedule, and we saw that it was fairly typical of many schools that we travel to. There are several classes that run over 25, but then, as is the case in many schools, as you are teaching Mandarin or whatever it might be, you are going to have lower class sizes because of student enrollments. Students select, and you want to, as a high school, try to accommodate as many student needs as you possibly can. And so that's a key point there. So current operating capacity talks about what you have now, and it takes into consideration current building use with regard to deficiencies as well. So for example, and I am so pleased to say, we don't see this in Merrimack. We have seen it in many other cases. We did not see a single classroom being run under a stairwell. We did not see anyone trying to teach in a tiny closet with no windows and no air circulation, and so on and so forth. Adjustments have been made within the community that are very positive, and therefore we observed a very, when we say a very positive instructional environment. And that's obviously very important. Okay. Now, when we get to planned operating capacity, it takes into consideration 21st century programming. And so we take into consideration future planning for construction or programming. We correct deficiencies if we see them. Key point in planned operating capacity, we keep current programs. Okay, we try to make sure that that happens, and you can see the whole list here. The last one is extremely important, and this we emphasize very much with our reports. We believe that it is important to maintain a sufficient capacity cushion within your whole district and within each of your schools. And the reason for that is, so we talk in terms of a 10% capacity cushion. And that's important, especially based on what I just referred to with regard to the demographics. That's number one. Number two, if you take a look at the parentheses, there is a clear national trend moving toward full-day kindergarten. We did a project just recently in the state of Rhode Island for a particular district. They are one of 4 districts. Now, Rhode Island is not a huge state, as you know, but they are one of 4 districts that does not have full-day K. And so it's a national trend. So obviously that, plus residential housing development, plus the business community moving forward. The advice we give to districts is to make sure that you maintain sufficient capacity, because the last thing any school board wants to do is have to go back and say, you know, we closed this building, now it's not up to code, and you know what, we need a new one. So that's a point that we emphasize very strongly, because we have seen that happen, and it can be a major problem. So now we take a look at the schools. I'm going to take you through the Mastrocola Elementary with showing you everything that was in the report, okay? Now, it's very important for the public to know that the full report, which was sent to the board, will be on the school district website for anyone who wants to take a look at it. All right, so you'll be able to see the full report on the district website. This is the elementary. As you all know, it's attached to the upper building. And here is some key information. It's a pre-K through 4 building. Site acreage. I combine this because the information, it's really one site, and it's combined with the upper elementary and the high school site in terms of acreage. So that was the acreage information that was available. You can see when it was constructed. You can see all of the years when there were renovations and additions. You can see the square footage, classrooms, and it's October 1 of this year enrollment. Okay? Now, I'm not going to belabor these points with the other schools, but I thought if I took you through this one, then that would be helpful. Okay, so you see the number of interchangeable classrooms, pre-K and K classrooms. All right, now this is how we compute our current operating capacity. And you see we take the numbers that were given to us by the district. And now, very important, take a look at those numbers for half-day pre-K and half-day K. And you notice 72 and 60. Those numbers are what they are because those classrooms are being used twice a day in terms of capacity. So if you went to full day K or something like that, that's an important thing to take into consideration, and that emphasizes the point that I made just a few minutes ago, okay? So capacity is higher than it might be in some other districts if they had full day K because of the fact that you get that extra right there. All right. So the total current operating capacity, 442. Here's the way we did this with the classrooms bringing online, so to speak. If a classroom was designed for instructional purposes but is being used for meeting space or for storage of instructional materials or things along those lines, we bring that on for planned operating capacity because in most instances it can be there can be some shifting, and so that's where you see that. So you see the planned operating capacity for Mastrocola up at 464. Now, with each of the schools in the full report, we went through this process. How many instructional spaces and what are they used for? And you can see that listing there. And then we talk about core facilities. And then we talk about administrative spaces, nurses' stations, teacher work areas, then support staff spaces, and then instructional administrative technology. How many computer labs do they have? How many computers per classroom? LCD projectors. And that continues special ed plans, health records, attendance at the lower elementary are done electronically. And you see, we've noted in every single building, wireless accessibility is expanding. This is very impressive. Based on our travels, we find that this is certainly should be commended as you're moving forward with that. And then we take a look at major ADA compliance, and with the exception of a few restrooms, across the board, we found that these schools were compliant. And then major systems, this is based on interviews, and we found that everything at Mastrocola was viewed as satisfactory. Site information. Here's where things start to change a little bit in some of the schools because we get into parking issues. And so you notice that school day parking is viewed as adequate because they have that large parking lot on the other side of the building, okay? And event parking was reported to be somewhat tight during various events. Field space adequate, and areas for pickup drop-off were viewed as adequate. And storage across the board was adequate, okay? Now, I will, so this takes us all the way through what a typical school analysis looks like, and this is what you folks received in the full report. Now, as we go to the other schools, we're going to just do the overview pages. And so with Reed's Ferry, pre-K through 4, all right, and you can see the construction date, and then the additions, renovations, number of classrooms. Now, there might be a difference between Reed's and Thornton's, even though they're the same size building, in terms of number of general classrooms used because they have different student populations and they're trying to accommodate different specialized programming. And, and then the kindergarten and the October 1 enrollment. And then you see the same compilation and analysis. Current operating capacity 550 and the planned operating capacity 594. 2 classrooms using that same definition that I referenced previously brought online increases the total planned operating capacity. Then we go to Thornton's Ferry, and with that, same process, K through 4. My understanding is that that may change down the road, and so the pre-K would be across the board, but that has not happened yet. And you see the acreage, construction, square footage, number of interchangeables, and the enrollment. And then you see the computation of the planned operating capacity as well as the current operating capacity. And with that, school also 2 classrooms brought additional classrooms online. Now we go to the upper elementary, Mastrocola. I apologize, I should have gotten a better picture of this with the cross there, but okay. The grades 5 through 6. Again, you see that it's combined with the Mastrocola Elementary and Merrimack High School site. Take a look at the construction date. Okay, and you can see the times that it was received additions or renovations, square footage, number of interchangeables, and its current enrollment. On this side, we have the interchangeable classrooms currently in use, and we have the planned operating capacity, which would bring 8 additional classrooms online. Now, this is, it's important to understand, these classrooms that would come online, this does not mean they are not used. They are used. But there would be a potential to bring 8 classrooms online as interchangeable classrooms. And so that's where that number comes from. And then we get the middle school. I'm kind of proud of that picture. That one looks a little better. And you can see it's a beautiful structure, and I'm sure you all are well aware of that. And it was a beautiful day. And here you see 7-8, 64 acres, 120,000 square feet. Okay, 2004 construction time, and the number of classrooms, and this year's October 1 enrollment. Then we go to the current operating capacity. And there are 4 additional rooms that could come back online for full use. And again, this does not imply that they are not being used. And so we have, excuse me, planned operating capacity 768. And that takes us through the middle school. Then we go to the high school. And with the high school, we have 213,000 square feet. It was constructed in 1965. It's a 9 through 12 structure. Again, notation that its site is tied really to the Mastrocola sites as well. And the enrollment is 1,306, 46 interchangeable classrooms. Planned operating capacity and current operating capacity in this particular case are the same, based on our analysis. And that is because the spaces and the programming in the high school are being used for the most part in a way that NESDEC found to be typical. And so the number is 1,595 for both. And this is our computation for the high school. We do this with every high school. It's a different way of setting it up. Reason being, as you can see, if you take a look at the art room, all right, 4 art rooms, maximum class size typically, remembering they can go over, but typically 16. And when you take a look at tech ed, you see the same thing at the bottom of the column. And for the only ones that we classified in the 30 range maximum was phys ed, because oftentimes high schools do run class sizes, excuse me, in phys ed at about that number. Okay? So we use a programming utilization factor of 0.80. And that is fairly common. That's considered a best practice standard. And why do we do that? Because time and time again, as you go to competitive high schools, you find that these numbers in this column represent the maximums. But it may be very important to continue something such as an upper level foreign language or an AP class, all right? And oftentimes you may find that the AP physics class, for example, may not have as many students as some of the others. And yet, a school, if they're preparing students for engineering programming, AP calculus and AP physics are very important to those students, and therefore those classes, most schools make a decision that they are going to run, even if they run with 13 or 14 or 15 students. Okay? So what we do is, and this is fairly common practice, we use that 0.80. We take the total number of student spaces available, and then we multiply it times a 0.80 programming utilization factor, and that works out fairly well. Okay? All right. So 1595. Then we got to the central office. I thought that was a pretty good picture. There you go. And this was on the same day that I visited the high school, actually, and you could see it was a very nice day. Okay, it's located adjacent to the high school, as you well know, built in 1963. Okay, and it was purchased by the district in 1973, has approximately 1,624 square feet. And these are the different workstations that are accommodated within the central office. And you notice that we identified first floor, and we also identified ground floor. And the ground floor, I'm sure you all have been to the ground floor. The ground floor is really a converted, I didn't use the term, but it's a converted basement. Okay, and so the offices, and one of the offices is actually pretty much under the one of the stairwells down there. They are not very well, you know, there isn't a lot of privacy. There is not, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And the other central office spaces include the lunch, meeting, copy room. That's one room. All right, and then the storage spaces on the ground floor and the ground floor vault, okay, which is difficult. Okay, and notes on the central office, space is limited and viewed as inadequate by NESDEC. Okay, and due to the lack of space and the configuration, confidentiality and privacy are affected, clearly. The meeting area, break room, lunch room, and copy machine, they're all located in the same small space near the back of the office to the left. Several workspaces are in the ground floor basement. Storage capacity is very limited. And some of the rooms in the central office are, when these buildings were initially constructed, they were homes. And so some of them have pull-out drawers for storage, which were the bedroom drawers originally. And so they weren't designed for the purpose that they're now being used. And there are systems issues with heating, air conditioning. There are electric overloads which trip the circuit breakers. And in the central office, as opposed to the special services office, the roof and exterior walls are in need of upgrade. The roof in the special services office is no longer in need of upgrade, as you all know, because of the what happened in the storm a few years back. And then the special services office, similar information with regard to the site, and fairly similar information with regard to the workstations. The important to note, however, the all office current workstations that are being utilized are on the first floor. They have the similar situation with the lunch break, copy room, meeting room. They do have a little bit more of a meeting room. However, there is a workstation in there. There is a small testing room, and there are storage spaces on the ground floor. However, and there is a handicapped accessible restroom, and there were handicapped accessible restrooms in the central office. Space limitations are very similar. Okay. However, when you get to the systems, the heating system distributes heat unevenly. There are surges in terms of heat. Air conditioning limited, electric overloads, tripping of circuits, inadequate outlets, and the exterior walls are in need of an upgrade. And the other thing that is important to understand is that there is also a moisture issue there. And so that creates difficulty in terms of employees working in that area and also storage. Okay. So that takes us through the capacities. And now we go to findings. And the first question that we took a look at was, could we maintain, or could the district maintain the status quo and remain at their current locations? And we believe at NESDEC that the existing central office and special service office facilities have significant inadequacies, which I just pointed out. And I'm not going to go through them all again. However, you certainly can see them, and I'm sure you have experienced them. In NESDEC's view, due to the above-mentioned inadequacies, a status quo option we do not believe is viable, cost-effective, or sustainable. It would not, in our view, make sense for the district to put a lot of money into the maintenance of two facilities which are not able to accommodate work needs. Second question that we dealt with was relocation of the Merrimack Central Office to Mastrocola Upper Elementary. So the idea would be to move the Merrimack SAU Central Office to the Upper Elementary, and we would be talking about the northeast corner, which was also reviewed back in 2010 in a prior study. And you can see the spaces that would be accommodated, including the square footage that would be allocated for each of the spaces. And you would come to a total of 4,695 square feet. And you can see, based on our analysis, obviously, given the status quo as the alternative, it would provide improvement. Sufficient workspace, privacy, storage, building problems would be at least largely eliminated. Lunch break and office machine space, and the location would be in an area that is relatively easily accessible by the public. Challenges associated with this, and there are several. In order to accommodate this, the upper elementary school building, existing instructional spaces would have to be relocated, and several spaces would have to be reconfigured. And I think you've been through this before with a couple of other analyses where space reconfiguration was considered. The chain link fence at the northeast entrance would also have to be moved, and that's, and reconfigured. Now, the cost of this is somewhat open, because the analysis that we had was that a similar project 4 years ago was estimated at $495,000. I believe there was another estimate of around $600,000 for something similar. And at that point, they were saying that this was about 2/3 of the cost of new construction. It was not part of the scope of the project for NESDEC to conduct a cost analysis of a new one. And current costs, we do believe, however, 4 years down the road, and with a booming construction, that they probably would be higher, okay? And we think there is adequate instructional space for, to accommodate existing instructional programming, and I emphasize the word existing instructional programming. The alignment location of grade levels, however, may not work out the way that it is now, and that may be an issue that they will have to deal with. Meaning, can you organize a group together as they do now? Traffic patterns would be affected, and students would no longer pass through that corridor that would house the central office. And this is the key one. In the event that enrollment trends change and enrollments increase above projections, or if there are changes in instructional models, think of that 1960s versus today. And should that occur, and there is a need to create additional instructional space within that building, it would be difficult and very costly to restore reconfigured spaces to regular instructional classrooms. That would definitely be an issue. The next one, don't have a solution to this, okay? But we certainly pointed out. Parking right now is a major issue at Mastrocola Upper Elementary. You all know that. And and that reference to slide 53 is in the main report. All right, just so you know. Okay. Accommodating an additional 20 to 25 central office spaces. Remember, we have 12 employees, and then you've got to provide space for people, building principals or meetings or so on and so forth. That will be a significant challenge. It may require a conversion of the existing playground to parking spaces. But in the event that that did happen, then play space is already limited. And our understanding is that in Merrimack, field space is limited. And so therefore, it would be diminishing that. And lastly, travel time. Now, I mean, it's a trip, but it's a walk across the street or a walk across the parking lot. Depending on the location of the special services, and you're going to see that in a second, but the travel time could increase between 15 to 20 minutes from the two central offices. Now, I realize, and I know all of you do, that when you talk about that today, we're in the electronic age. And so some people say, well, all you got to do is email them or scan it and send it, and so on and so forth. But I've been in numerous situations where I do that. And I've also been in a situation where I say, Mary, you know that thing I just gave you? Could you just change that right now? And clearly, that's one piece. The other piece is the interaction. And it's a much more satisfactory and I think a much more efficient process if the offices are together. So that's just a viewpoint. But so the goal that we've seen in our research has talked about trying to facilitate or communication and trying to have a closer situation, and certainly 15, 20-minute travel time would not do that. All right, so those are challenges. Okay. Next, special services. Okay. Now you're going to see that special services, what we say about special services, for the most part, we're going to be saying, we've already said about the office. So I'm going to move through this much more quickly. You can see the total estimated square footage at 2795. And with special services, the psychologist's office would also be located with them. That is not the case now. And you can see the spaces there. Also storage for documents, records, vault space. Advantages are essentially the same. Challenges, same situation with the middle school, and the middle school has less space to give up. That's an important thing to note. But the special services office has lower square footage requirement than, so that's the reason that we put that as a possibility. Now the cost, take a look at this cost factor carefully, please. We took a look at the earlier study done by the architectural firm, and they had talked about at Upper Elementary, Mastacola, it would be that 495 number. We did not analyze or have, it was not in the scope to anticipate what would the cost be at the middle school of moving special services there. However, it is important to understand that in our view the cost would be equal to or exceed that which was in the earlier report for a similar project. And we would advise, however, that this assumption would be reviewed with an architect. Okay, and then again, it appears that adequate instructional space would be available to accommodate existing instructional programming. However, and this is very important in a middle school, the alignment of spaces for grade level groupings may be altered. And you know how they organize middle schools with teams together. That may not be completely available with this new reorganization. Okay, and that's an important point. School corridor patterns would be altered, as we mentioned. Special services staff, unless they were going to take over the 2 restrooms that are located near the gymnasium on the back end of the gym, unless they were to do that, they would have to share the restroom spaces with the other administrative offices. And in the event that, again, enrollment trends change, especially with the middle school situation, it appears to us that it could be very difficult to accommodate programming needs without having to take it apart again. So that's a concern. Parking, daytime parking with 12 to 15 spaces is possible. However, event parking is a real problem, we are told, by several people at the middle school. And apparently one of the issues is when there's an event going on and people who are not really familiar with Merrimack come into the community, they're not familiar with the parking restrictions or whatever, and therefore they park sometimes. So that's an issue, and we're assuming that would continue to be an issue because these offices would be open until late in the day and possibly in the evening. Okay, and then again, the travel problem, travel time. Okay, lastly, we were asked to determine whether or not we felt, based on our analysis and research, that the Special Services Office could be moved to one of the district schools, and this would be what it would require: 18 workstations, reception, waiting area, meeting conference space, adequate space for machines, 40 to 50 parking spaces. And our conclusion was that there is no school which would have sufficient capacity to accommodate both offices in that one building. Now, this last piece that's bolded is important. We hope this is helpful to you, okay? And that it will help to resolve this and provide some solutions that will last for many years to come. And I highlight that term, many years to come. All right? It has to be something that's going to last a long time. We see the report as a beginning point, and this is key, an analysis of the advantages and challenges of relocating the central office and special services office to a single separate facility should also be reviewed. And I know you folks have considered that possibility, and that was not a part of the scope of this project, but clearly, and I can't emphasize this enough, before the district makes a decision to say we're going to move the two offices to separate buildings, and it's going to be very important that everyone be confident that they can say, and this is going to be the situation for a long time, and that we believe that we are not going to have to reconfigure again somewhere down the road. That would be potentially a major, major problem.
Great. Thank you very much. I have to imagine that after your presentation, there's a number of perhaps questions or comments from the board, if you're willing to take them, Mr. Kennedy.
Certainly am.
Vice Chair Barnes.
It's funny that you talk about, in some of your analysis, the high school parking situation. And I think, looking at if the high school is the only factor, the only moving part in all of this, it may be accurate. I can tell you from personal experience, last week was senior week, and so the Friday night football game was a packed house against Salem, which is not a small school in and of itself. Right. At the same time, the Mastrocola Upper Elementary School had their family fun night. I know my husband dropped us off and parked at the far stretch of Town Hall's parking lot just to get a space and walked all the way over. Now, of course, you're talking about families with young children. So they're walking in the dark in less than ideally lit parking going through a church parking lot to Town Hall to get back to the car. So, I'd say when you have multiple moving factors, it may not be the case that it's always, sufficient. And I think, the district is a very active district amongst all its schools, and I don't think this is going to be the only time that could happen. We also have events like the Merrimack Business Expo, and in prior years it was spread out throughout, and that also created parking gluts. So we always have things, even community-based, that can also impact that. July 4th is another. So it's not just us, it's community, and does it all configure accurately. Another area you talked about was our SPED building. And the one thing I was looking for, the one bullet I didn't see, and I know that we've discussed it when I was on the Planning and Building Committee years ago, is when you walk into the SPED office, that the waiting area creates an ADA noncompliance because you can't get both people sitting in chairs and a person in a wheelchair through that.
Okay.
So that's one I think, if there's any edits to make to that, that's something that's been noted year over year as far as a deficiency that can't be overcome because of the space configurations.
Yep. I think you're right there. That's absolutely correct.
So.
Yeah. And I did have the experience of attempting to park at Upper Mastrocola, and B, also walking the church parking lot, and during the day, and I had an opportunity also to watch the pickup and drop-off procedures, and I certainly commend the staff and administration because they really have worked tremendously hard to make sure that it is a safe environment, but it is extremely difficult in order. And as you're coming in from the end of that church parking lot, when it's drop-off time in the morning, that traffic backs up. There is no doubt about it, and it's difficult.
Yeah, it's also 8:30 Mass for those who go daily. So I mean, that's another thing. When we were doing a fields needs analysis a few years ago, the one thing we always talked about was having good corporate partners for fields. Well, we have a good, religious partner for parking, but, that's their property, and it's always their prerogative to change that relationship. So that's to me something that should also be noted, that's an agreement we have that is always subject to change without, without notice.
Sure.
And will put us in a bit of a pickle.
Yep.
So, things that I would like to see, because this is gonna end up being a living document. As we project and go out years, we're gonna come back to this document. I see that, happening. So, those type of, small additional pieces are probably important to have in the report as edits.
Okay.
So, and that's what I have so far.
Thank you. Ms. Guayumi.
Yeah, I had a question as you were projecting the cost of relocating both of these buildings
Yep.
into either the middle school or the elementary.
Yep.
Did you look into like what economies of scale they would gain if they were together? So for example, having them separate as they are today, relocating separately, they're not sharing, let's say, a file room, or they're not sharing
Right.
certain printing equipments and things like that. Was that a factor in the analysis?
Well, to be honest, we were asked to determine whether or not the two offices could be in one school, and we analyzed that. In analyzing whether there would be economies of scale if the two were in a building which was suitable for them, as a matter of fact, we've had several discussions at the NESDEC office about this, and we believe that there would be some economies of scale that certainly could be developed, and storage being one of them. If the two were located in the same area, and there may be some other potential for economies that would not exist if the two are separated. So that is true. But we, to be honest, we did not get into an in-depth analysis of the two together, because we were looking and we said, well, you can't put them together in this circumstance.
All set? Mr. Schneider.
Yeah, first I'd like to thank for the detail that's in this, because I know for me, this is exactly what I was looking for to get sort of the lay of the land, so to speak. A couple of questions, and, I'm the liaison to the planning and building now, so I know the conversations that are likely going to be occurring, so I'm trying to anticipate with some questions here. You have the projected occupancy numbers where, you said based on bringing classrooms online, 20, the current use of the space and the type of programs and stuff. You also talked about a 10% buffer that you add on to that. So when you look at that, does that assume that the 10%, you could absorb 10% more in terms of occupancy, or what does that mean?
Well, what we do with each school is we do the numbers for each school in terms of what is the planned operating capacity, and then from that we deduct 10%.
Oh, so you reduce it by 10%.
Yeah,
Okay.
because especially in a community such as this, but we're seeing it everywhere. The trend is going to be, we believe this is absolutely the case, the trend is going to be that there will be more full-day kindergarten, and there will be a wider expanse of pre-K, and you may end up with a somewhat of a residential housing, I'm not going to use the term boom, but you may have a significant increase in residential housing, and you have the boomers. And all of those factors point to it's really to your advantage to maintain a capacity cushion so that you do not get into a situation where you have to come to the community and ask them to add on to a building.
Right, which sort of gets to my next question. If you look at the projections that you've made, it does show a drop over the next decade or so by about, what, another 500, I think, if I looked at
Over 300,
300, okay.
394.
Right, and then it starts to level, the trend
Yeah.
shows it leveling. You also cautioned us against being weary of fluctuations that might head. Are you seeing signs that the areas here, people look longer than 10 years or looking to like hockey stick any particular direction? It's challenging for us to look 10 years out to see what the population is
Right.
going to be, let alone even further out. So.
And we at NESDEC, to be honest, let's be right out there. We say it's very important to pay attention to trends. It's very important to pay attention to births, to residential housing, to future planning for construction, to anything that might be an impetus or a hindrance with regard to growth. And so we mentioned we are not clairvoyant, and so we cannot tell you what's going to happen. But what we can say is that southern New Hampshire, on this, in the eastern part of the state, has great potential for growth, and so that's something that you have to keep an eye on in our judgment, so that you are protecting the quality of education for your students, so that you don't get into an overloaded situation down the road, and so it's a balancing activity.
That's it for now.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Mr. Kennedy? I just wanted to clarify the point that Mr. Schneider was asking about. If I take Mastrocola Elementary School as an example, it has a current operating capacity of 442.
Yep.
And because of the additional full-sized classroom online, that raised it to a planned operating capacity of 464.
Correct.
Just to be clear, you haven't taken the 10% cushion into account there. What you recommend is that we as a district interpret that number as less maybe the 46,
That's
which
right.
is the 10%.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we would advise that all the way through. And what we have, what we typically do is then you do that same process with your grade organizations.
Right.
So you have your elementary, you have your upper elementary, you have your middle school, and you have your high school, and you follow that same process. And that should protect you from any, surprises
Significant
or
surprises.
issues that are going to cause you problems down the road.
That's great. Well, again, as Mr. Schneider said, I found the report to be extremely useful. It established a great baseline with a solid methodology for actually calculating our capacities, which I think is something that we were most definitely looking for. And as we examine the ways of trying to solve this problem, and for that matter, not even this immediate problem of a central office central office SAU and special ed building,
Yep.
and how to accommodate that. I think this is a good document for us just strategically to look at in terms of operational planning as well, for our facilities. So I thank you very much for the report and the in-depth explanation, and hopefully we see you soon. We
Okay.
enjoyed having you here
Great.
in the
Well,
district.
I enjoyed the entire process, and I can't say how wonderful everyone was. I mean, it was just fantastic, and everyone was just so cooperative. So,
I'm not surprised, but it's very nice to hear as well.
okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Schneider.
So I have I don't know if it's procedural, but since we're still on the agenda topic, I have a question.
Yes.
My understanding is the Planning and Building Committee is meeting a week from today, on the 27th. And obviously, this report will be discussion point of the meeting.
Yeah.
Do we, as a board, want to discuss now whether we want to provide any direction of things that we'd like the Planning and Building Committee to look at or talk about or focus on based on this report? I know some of us are just digesting it, bits and pieces, so I just want to know whether we want to discuss now or whether it's not appropriate.
It's certainly appropriate to have discussion based upon the report. Certainly in the light of the fact that there is a planning and building meeting in a month. That in fact there are a week.
That's probably another one.
Within the week. And the fact that there are items identified within this report that planning and building could conceivably work on to help illuminate, in particular related to specific costs of the various options. Perhaps a charge or a discussion of a potential charge is in order. What does the board think? Yeah. Do you have a sense of what the charge would be?
Well, I know that, so I wasn't there for all the history of how we got to where we are today with the proposal for the new building as well as the background on the evaluating existing space. But I know that this report calls out two specific possibilities, one of moving the SAU to JMU's, the other to move SPED to the middle school, which is something brand new that I don't know if we've really talked about before. I don't want to make any judgment here whether I say, yes, this is a great idea, or, oh, it's a really bad idea. But I think that as we prepare as a district to put really all the options out in front of us to decide what the right thing to do is, I'd like to have the school board give a charge to the Planning and Building Committee to maybe take a step towards looking at each one of these to see what the cost might be of each one of them, what the issues are around them, like the parking issue at both buildings and things like that. I think that it would be good to have them act on our behalf.
Okay. So along those lines, if in the form of a motion you'd like to propose a charge for Planning and Building Committee, that's something I think the board is willing to entertain.
Right. That's so the motion would be, I move. Okay, fine. I always do things backwards, but I move that the school board provide a charge to the Planning and Building Committee to look at the two options around moving the feasibility of moving the SPED to JMU's and SPED to middle school and SAU to JMU's. Got it. To look a little bit more at that, to investigate some of the.
Okay, is there a second to the motion? Made by Ms. Gual-Yumi. Okay, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think I already did.
Thank you. Okay.
But basically, I think, again, not without making a judgment, I think that we need to have that group look to see is the data that for the construction. I mean, there were some assumptions on here about cost that were there. I don't know whether it's right or wrong. I don't know whether the middle school is higher or lower than what JMU's was.
Right.
But I think we need to look at that and see what's valid.
Okay. Vice Chair Barnes.
To that point, I think the other valuable service that the Planning and Building Committee can provide in this is to look at their original report from 2010 and see where maybe there are some areas that weren't covered in this report, and maybe make a kind of an addendum to it, just taking out specifically what isn't in this report, and just having those areas that were identified on the ground running as they were preparing for a couple of years. So I think that would also add to what they could bring back to us.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing would be, I mean, the NESDEC report is very specific about the offices that are required based on the current staffing and things, and whether that lines up exactly with the current proposal. You know, so I mean,
Yeah, but
yes,
things like
we
the
could.
deficiencies that NESDEC identified versus what maybe planning and building identified that NESDEC did not. Just the areas where there may be some
Whatever. You're right. You don't want to lose work you've already invested in. But on the
Exactly.
other hand, you want to look a little bit beyond what you might have done to cover the other areas. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but between the
Right.
two, I think we have
Mhm.
the communication plan.
yeah, no, I agree.
Ms. Gualiumi.
I think more, just to add on to what Shannon said, is the compare and contrast is helpful, because it's what perhaps is on this that maybe wasn't originally on the original report in addition, which is, I think, what you're saying overall.
Yeah, absolutely.
So based on what I've heard, it may make sense to amend the motion. In terms of the way the motion was worded, I think it was we asked Planning and Building to look into further the two options, and then we discussed the fact that it's cost. And so if you're open to it, and as well, Ms. Gualiumi, on the second, to amend the motion to ask the Planning and Building Committee to provide detailed costs for the two options of locating central office in James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School and special services in Merrimack Middle School, and additionally to compare, contrast, and update reporting based upon Planning and Building's original report and the new NESDEC report. That may be more explicit of a charge for Planning and Building.
Can I jump in to
Yes.
add to that possible amendment and also put a time frame on it, since we are coming up on budget season?
I guess the question would be, obviously, the Planning and Building Committee is meeting in a week, so we'll give them the charge. What would the board like to see in terms of sort of a turnaround on this to receive data? You're getting the evil eyeball by the chair of the Planning and Building Committee in the audience, just for people at home.
When oh, I'm going the wrong way. When are we getting the budget delivered to us?
So we will get the budget delivered to us at the very beginning of December.
So I would say by the end of December.
End of December.
Does
I
anybody
mean, as
else-
it relates, go ahead, Superintendent.
I think it might be advantageous to have it in the first couple of weeks of January, because you really aren't going to begin to deliberate until January. So it would be my intention to include it in the budget as an item just to consider as a warrant. So I think if you did it at the beginning of January, or when you're going through hearings, one of the hearings could be specifically to hear the outcome. That would give Planning and Building perhaps a better time span, because you've got the holidays included there. So I think you'd still be able to get what you need.
So what I've got, is Planning and Building to provide detailed costs of the two options which were presented, specifically moving SAU to JMU's and SPED to Merrimack Middle School, and to further investigate, compare, and contrast their existing report versus the NESDEC report to make sure that there's no gaps or deficiencies. And we will ask that they do this work and complete in order to present back to the school board by early January.
Okay, so that's the amendment, and Ms. Gualiumi accepts the amendment. Okay, great. Is there any further discussion? Okay,
Well,
seeing, is there?
Well, I'd just like to explain to people that I didn't come in with an amendment all in my head, because we evolved as we went through. So I appreciate the board's indulgence as we crafted this on the fly in the typical style that I'm used to. So
Making sausage. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. That motion carries 5-0-0. And that now finally takes us to item number 6 on tonight's agenda, presentation regarding COP Sync 911. I'd invite to the table Lieutenant Paul Trepany, Mr. Brandon Flanagan, and Mr. Mike Silicki. Did I get that right? Wonderful. welcome, gentlemen, and Chief Doyle. And I'd like to thank you all for your patience this evening as we went through our capacity report, and we're very happy to have you here. I wasn't sure, Chief, if you were going to join us at the table or not. Otherwise, I would have been happy to introduce you.
Well, I'm happy to be here tonight, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. What I'm going to do is briefly speak about the program that we've engaged with in a partnership with CopSync, and I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Trepany, who has a lot more to talk about relative to the grant process, his discussions with Assistant Superintendent McLaughlin, and conceptually what the program is all about, and then we'll roll it right into the presentation by Brandon and retired Chief Salicki. So they'll give you an overview about the program in depth. What we've done is we've worked very closely with the folks from the Department of Homeland Security to bring to the table a program which we think is furtherance of the partnership that we've had with the Merrimack School District in terms of outreach to better be able to serve not only the faculty but also the students through a more expedited process to get an emergency notification out to emergency responders. And this is a program that Homeland Security has put its arms around as just doing that, and doing so and saving a boatload of time in the process. It's really something that we've worked forward diligently over the better part of the last 6 months, I think, since it was brought to our attention through the grant process and whatnot. And to speak more, I think, eloquently and probably in far greater details, Lieutenant Trepany, and I'd like to turn it over to Paul right now.
Thank you, Board, for having us and the school administration staff. The chief actually spoke a lot to it about this grant program we became aware of with this technology for the emergency alert system. You know, he really just jumped on me and put all this before you before I had a chance to speak to it. But basically the technology that the Homeland Security has got behind here, that they've made grant funds available for, they feel it's a promising, worthwhile program. And when we began looking into it, I had the chance to attend a Chiefs conference where they did a presentation, and then just last month we went to Londonderry where they did a full press rollout and a demonstration there. And the software, like I said, is more of an instant notification system to come right into our dispatch center and to the cruisers on the road, getting around the traditional telephone call, someone trying to get to a phone, relaying the information. It's more of an instant program, and for that I'll let Mr. Flanagan and Mr. Salicki speak to the program.
Good evening. My name's Mike Salicki, as Chief said, I just recently retired.
Chief, just can you hit the green button on the?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Yeah, as Chief Doyle said, I just recently retired. I was I've been a chief in New Hampshire for 21 years, a total of 26 years on the job. And believe it or not, I'm only 19. So, but anyway, this past year I was president of the New Hampshire Chiefs of Police Association. And last December, Brandon Flanagan and Brendan CopSync brought the CopSync 911 program to the attention of the New Hampshire Police Chiefs and demonstrated it for us. We instantly then saw the power of this system, and we knew then it was a game changer, not only for law enforcement, but for police officers responding to schools. We took it then to the Sheriff's Association. They jumped on board. We took it to the Tactical Officers Association. They jumped on board. Took it to the New Hampshire State Police. They jumped on board. We took it to Homeland Security and said, listen, as law enforcement executives, we believe in this product. We want to move forward with this because it's going to protect kids and police officers responding to school. They saw the power of it based on what they see happening in the world and some of their internal operations, that they can use it as well. They agreed that we should seek funding, took it to the governor's office. She saw it. She said, let's do this. So when we knew then, because we're rural, that because of the power of the system, reaching out to those 5 closest geographical cruises, we knew it had to be a statewide initiative. Because in Kensington, if I touch it off, I got one guy working, it's going to be maybe 2 troopers, a couple of sheriffs, 5 other towns, even cross-border into Salisbury or Amesbury, Massachusetts. And that's the power of this platform. It doesn't matter what state you are. It doesn't matter which agency you are. If there's an emergency at our school, this is going to reach out to the 5 closest cruises and expedite that response to save and stop what's happening at our schools. And that's something we don't have. But even more powerful on the law enforcement side, and the chief can tell you, and I've had many major incidences in the state of New Hampshire, when a huge incident takes place, my last one, we had 150 guys on scene in a couple of hours. Didn't know who was there, didn't know where they were. I got a call at 9 o'clock at night from the sheriff saying, "Chief, do you need my command vehicle?" I didn't know where it was. Some other chief saw it and said, "Park here." They had food on board. I don't, so, but again, this has an instant command and control ability, not only for law enforcement, but for the school side. So you just like you, when a situation that happens is the senior staff are gonna, where are my teachers? Where are my students? How do I account for them? And where do I find them? Now we have that all under one roof. And that not only will you be able to see that command and control, we'll be able to see that command and control, which is huge for all of us. So that'll really put an expedited process and just mitigate these things and really protect everybody. So having said that, I'll turn it over to Brandon. He's our Executive Vice President, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chief. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you. Thank you for inviting Chief Silicki and myself to present this to you this evening. School administrators, Chief and Lieutenant, thank you as well. COPSYNC 911 obviously is what we're here to talk about today. And what is COPSYNC 911? Simply, with COPSYNC 911, we are hoping to bridge the gap between a school building under threat directly to law enforcement. And the way we're able to do that is through our proprietary software platform. The software application of which we are hopefully all able to see either in front of us and or behind us is the law enforcement interface. This is the software interface that will sit resident on the MDTs or the in-car computers of the law enforcement officials, in addition to the dispatch terminals inside either the police department, the sheriff's department, or other law enforcement facilities throughout the state of New Hampshire in this particular aspect. Important to know, of course, for the law enforcement side, that this is a CJIS 5 compliant system. What that very simply means is that this is accessible to law enforcement and law enforcement only. Nobody outside the realm of law enforcement has access to the system. This meets and exceeds the FBI standards of encryption and protocols as it relates to safekeeping data and information of that nature. Specifically with COPSYNC 911, the way we're going to bridge that gap is by expediting response time. The primary purpose or goal of COPSYNC 911 is to, in fact, reduce response time. The reason why that is so important is because the FBI and Secret Service had conducted a study post-Sandy Hook and the roughly 75 school shootings that have occurred throughout the country since then. And their the main mission during that study was to try to conclude, how do we stop these types of incidences from happening, right? Because as you look at the trend, certainly the numbers aren't going downward, they continue to go upward for a number of reasons. Although the FBI and Secret Service could not come to one conclusion, they did, however, conclude that the best way to mitigate loss of life in an unfortunate incident such as an active shooter is to reduce response time, because statistically speaking, one of three things happens. The gunman will turn the weapon on himself, turn his aggression to law enforcement, or surrender to law enforcement. So our hope with this system is by the mere presence of law enforcement responding on scene quicker with a new means of communication that we otherwise don't have today, we can save lives in the meantime, and that's the ultimate goal here. Now, there is an activation point of this system that would sit on, or it's a software application that would sit on the computers inside a school building, platform agnostic, and that's going to be, again, accessible to all teachers, faculty, and staff members. We obviously don't want this in the hands of students and children for obvious reasons, which is why I'm not going to tell you or show exactly how we initiate the alert or speak to it specifically, but I will show you what happens when it is alerted. So with that being said, once the button is pushed from that software application on the computer, you're presented with a 15-second countdown. Now, if the teacher does absolutely nothing more than this will count down in a lapse from 15 to 0, sending an alert to the 5 nearest patrol cars, regardless of jurisdiction. We don't care who receives this alert. Our hope is that this will find, in a 50-mile geographical radius, the 5 nearest, regardless of platform, so that officers will receive this alert quicker than they otherwise would have. You can see that we are utilizing an internet or Wi-Fi connectivity in order to initiate and send this alert out. I also hope that you noticed that this alert was sent out in about a 15-second window. I could have clicked cancel at any point in time if I bumped it by mistake. Otherwise, I could have clicked send alert now. And in doing so, obviously that allows us to expedite that alert and send it out sooner than the 15 seconds. So the hope here and the mission here, again, is that we're sending this alert out to the 5 nearest patrol cars, the local, county, and state dispatch centers here in New Hampshire, as well as to the cell phones of officers in 15 seconds or less. Compare that to the 2 to 3 minute average that it takes for a normal citizen to pick up their cell phone, dial 911, be routed to the primary PSAP, and then routed to the local authorities, and then dispatch officers out. When you compare 15 seconds to 2 to 3 minutes, obviously we're talking a lifetime of difference. So you can see how this is already starting to unfold here with this solution. Now, turning your attention to the header up here, which I've just highlighted in blue, the officers and dispatchers have received some very critical and pertinent information, keeping again in mind that the teacher, as you saw me do, I haven't typed or clicked anything. So this alert was automatically generated and populated and sent out. It provides, of course, the time and the date stamp, but it also includes assistance has been requested from the Danvers School District, specifically the Fenway Middle School at the location of 222 Rosewood Drive in Danvers, more specifically Classroom 3. So in that 15-second period, law enforcement knows exactly which school district is under threat, what school specifically, the location, and what building from where inside that threat just derived from. The power in the network is in the detail that was just sent there. This relates more to law enforcement, but on the top right-hand corner, law enforcement has the ability to maintain their elements of command and control. They have the ability to see the officers, deputies, and/or troopers who have joined the network, and they can, of course, use this solution as that mechanism to put forth that command element by typing in here, as this provides for a two-way chat communication portal. Additionally, we provide for 2 very important blue hyperlinks up here at the top. You can see the threat location and then the target floor plan. In the instance that I'm a New Hampshire State Trooper driving through perhaps Route 3 and I get one of these alerts here in Merrimack, I perhaps might be one of the closest that day. And not knowing precisely where that middle school may be here in Merrimack, I have the luxury of clicking on that blue hyperlink and being directed directly to our map solution here, which will show you the threat location, specific down to the cross streets and intersection. Second, and probably most important, is the target floor plan. Same type of scenario. In the instance that that trooper or deputy is driving through who has no clue, A, where the building is or what the outlay may look like, that officer will have that readily available at his or her fingertips. And the purpose here, as you could probably imagine, is to get that officer on scene as quickly as possible and inside that building as quickly as possible. Let's say, for example, that the threat just derived from the gymnasium here. Well, certainly, seeing this, we're going to use the entrance here to enter that building. And our hope is to get them inside as quickly as possible, but also as safely as possible. The same study that I spoke of earlier concluded that the first officer through that door is shot, wounded, or killed 80% of the times. So if we can help make that approach for that officer that much quicker and safer, obviously as an organization, we're going to be able to provide a higher level of safety, security, and of course situational awareness in that type of scenario. Another point to highlight very quickly, and as somber as it was, the Columbine incident, there were over 800 officers on scene that day. It also took them 40 minutes to enter the building upon that occasion. The reason why is because back then the law enforcement protocol was to set up and surround the facility and await for your SWAT teams to enter the building. Obviously, through that unfortunate incident, as a law enforcement community, we've learned from that. And we know that that's not the best practice any longer. So going back to the study the Secret Service and FBI conducted, it's so important that that officer makes the approach as safe and as quick as possible because nowadays it's first on scene, first in the building.
And what we encourage the school and the police department to work together. You have your operation plan. We encourage you to put your entire operation plan on here so that, again, that we have that built-in layer of redundancy here in New Hampshire. So if your local PD starts to get overwhelmed, county's going to jump in and help. County then can start saying, units traveling from the north, this is where we want you to stage. EMS, we want you to stage here. Sheriff's Department, State Police, we want you to block off these roads. These will be all part of your operation plan. And again, we want that, encourage. You have aerial views of your school, put that, you have sectional pictures of your wings, build this out as robust as you can. You have access to this on a daily basis to do that. We've got chiefs that actually put, I want Captain so-and-so here, I want Sergeant so-and-so here. But that's the power of the system, because that gives us that command and control, so we won't have 800 people around a building trying to get in when we have chaos outside, trying to keep people away from the secure area.
And just as an example, touching on what Chief Silicki just said, as a commander here from Merrimack PD, I could certainly enter the chat room and say non-MPD stage at ... And obviously that's going to populate itself out and sent to all the other users that are on the network at that point in time. And of course, the further power in this is that although this is sent to the 5 closest based on GPS proximity to the threat location, dispatchers have the ability to select additional officers based on the geography of that location and add more and send more assets to that location as quickly as possible. I'm going to move along from the law enforcement side very quickly and show you what the situation looks like at the school on the school side. So this window here is the crisis communication portal. I mean to make that big. And what we're going to see here is this screen, which will pop up on the computer or the tablet or the smartphone from the person who first initiated the alert. So similarly, we see the information up here. We also have the ability to see the dispatchers who have received the alert, in addition to the officers who have received the alert. And under the location setting here, we have the ability to see all of our colleagues from that specific location that have received this alert. Because it's very important to know by the time, or when the time first person initiates the alert, this alert is also going to silently notify the entire portion of that school building, again silently. The hope here is that we're going to increase communication in a critical incident such as this. We have seen many instances, even in the state of New Hampshire, where when schools go into lockdown, communication breaks down. We know a specific instance where there was a threat at the school. Half the school went into lockdown, the other half never saw that. And that's a problem, because if you look at it in a bigger picture where there could be a, God forbid, an active shooter situation, we want to pull the children out of the hallways, we want to bunker down to the classroom, we want to follow through with our enhanced lockdown and possibly evacuation protocols and procedures. So by putting this out to absolutely everybody, we have the ability to notify everyone in that school building that there's a threat at their location, and they can follow their procedures from that point forward.
As well as the superintendent or anybody else in the administrative part of the school. So if you're out of town, you're at a meeting, something happens at one of the schools, you'll instantly get a text message notifying you, again, what building, what classroom, for everything else. And then you also have the ability to join that chat via a hyperlink. We don't on the law enforcement side yet because of the CGIS 5 protocols, but you can. So.
Yep, very important. And again, this works two-way chat communication as well. So although I may have been classroom 3 who first initiated the alert, I may not have had the ability to type any additional information whatsoever. All I could do was activate the alert. But in the instance that perhaps classroom 10 or 15 had enough ability or wherewithal to type additional information to law enforcement, they would have that ability because this would, of course, populate in front of them. So I could type in a message such as intruder, red hoodie, and not only is everybody at my location going to see this brief description, but law enforcement will have this available to them as well right there. And this is happening very quickly, folks. This is real time. This is a live production server, and this is exactly how fast this would work in a live setting. So now, from the law enforcement side, ETA is 1 minute. You see that over here on the school side, and there's your peace of mind minimally.
You think about it, you know, your school's under threat. You got teachers, seconds feel like hours, minutes feels like days. Now, teachers already know, they don't have to worry. When are the police going to go, what's going on? They're going to see it in real time. The police already have the information. The police are on scene. They're coming.
Mm-hmm. Additionally, we have the mobile application. So that allows for teachers to be completely mobile in a very true mobile setting. Think about how this may extend itself. Recess, bus release at the end of the day, potentially field trips throughout the state of New Hampshire. There's a reassurance, or there must be a level of reassurance for faculty and staff, knowing that if we travel from Merrimack to Grafton County, New Hampshire, and we witness something during a field trip, I could initiate that alert, and because we're working on a statewide level here in New Hampshire, that alert is still going to be sent and received by the 5 closest based on their GPS location at that location. Any questions so far in this?
Hands are going up. Ms. Gualiumi.
Does the system also work for like medical emergencies? Is it set up for that as well?
That's a great question. And one thing Chief Silicki and I often speak to is the term local control. Although we recommend that this system be used when lives are in danger, lives are in jeopardy, there's an intruder, there's somebody with a weapon. Local control may dictate how you decide to use this further. So typically we leave that up to you folks, and of course in conjunction with local fire, EMS, and of course the police chief and his staff. I'm not going to sit here and tell you no. I can just tell you the way that this product is indicated or is meant to be used.
And then I have another question, and it's just a curiosity question, and it's also about reducing that response time, getting emergency personnel quickly. And like you had stated, there could be somebody not familiar with the area going up the Everett. They would be maybe the closest. Is there an integration with the GPS, or can you are you set up in your vehicles? I'm sure you probably are really quickly that
law enforcement.
you can. Is there with law enforcement, or how you can quickly get those GPS directions in addition to just getting getting notified of the issue? How quickly can you get the GPS directions to get to where the emergency is occurring?
Do you mean integrating with like Garmin or something along those lines?
Yeah, or whatever your, does the system itself, maybe all of a sudden, can
We
you
don't-
push
we
the
don't-
location?
We don't
and-
necessarily provide turn-by-turn directions, but we understand that an officer driving code 3 to an incident at a school won't be staring at his or her computer. We knew that this was as equally important that dispatch has this information in real time. So that allows them the ability to dictate the best route of travel for that particular officer to get on scene as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Powell?
So this is, I understand, computer-based. However, you said there is a possibility of a mobile component. Like most computer stations anywhere, they lock down at a certain, after a certain amount of time. In a panic situation, if you will, where a faculty member has to access the system, what's the realistic expectation that they're going to be able to log back into their terminal in order to get to the alert system, or is there a workaround that?
Well, of course, it's not if the computer locks itself out. In theory, we don't expect anybody under that type of duress to be able to log back into their computer, at least efficiently. Understanding that, we also do provide for the mobile application so that faculty and staff will have that ability for their smart devices, including Apple, Android, tablets, and smartphones. Also, I would say that we're not limiting the number of users inside the school building. So if you think about it, there are going to be many, many layers of redundancies, whereas we're not just relying upon a individual or a handful of individuals to initiate the alert and send that out to law enforcement. You know what I mean, to be blunt, but in the instance of an active shooter, we're going to hear gunshots. So multiple people will be able to activate that alert and push that to law enforcement.
Okay.
And you may get the 5 or 2 or 3 closest classrooms will do nothing. But what our hope is, the classrooms down south from there or north from there will be able to put live information in there instantly so we know what's going on in the school as we make our approach.
Now, that just raises another, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And the last piece I was going to add to answering your question is, protocol or policy may change if you decide to adapt or adopt this type of solution, where the computers don't time themselves out after X minutes, so that this is always accessible to that faculty member. But of course, that's left up to the those are your decisions, to your discretion.
Your comment, Chief, of multiple, classrooms hearing it. What is there? I don't know. I don't want to call it fail-safe or lockout, but if 3-4 individuals are logging in at the same time, is that are the other ones going to be canceled out? The other alerts be canceled out, or?
So what's going to happen is nobody's going to have to log into anything, just to be clear, because we want to keep this as simple as possible. And if we weren't in a public session, I'd be more than happy to show you exactly how it works, because it is very simple.
Sure.
However, there are not going to be multiple alerts that are sent from the same location.
Okay.
Rather, the person who first initiates the alert is the initiator. Everybody else who tries to initiate the alert thereafter would actually be brought directly into the chat room. So now law enforcement is not going to be faced with multiple pages of alerts that they have to sift through and try to understand.
That's
and
exactly
understand
right.
what's best.
Okay.
So
Thank
yes,
you. Thank you very
absolutely,
much.
sir. Yep.
Mr. Schneider?
So 2 sort of unrelated questions. Given the fact that this could spread across multiple instructors, staff members, on desktops, on mobile devices, are there procedures or methodologies that if somebody that's wants to pull a prank on this. I mean, you know, for example, a kid gets a hold of a teacher's thing and hits the thing and runs away, and then 15 seconds later, is there a sort of a safe or check and balance here?
There is, and the first part to that answer is the reason why I'm not showing you in a live setting. As an organization, we do go out of our way to try to protect the integrity of the system as best as we can. So we do not publicize how it's initiated from the school. We don't want this in the hands of those it doesn't belong in. With that being said, you do have the option to cancel the alert in that 15-second window if it was bumped by mistake. Otherwise, if that alert is initiated by a student with malintent, I'm not going to speak to law enforcement. The chiefs and lieutenant in the room can certainly do that. However, I'm going to equate a false alarm to that of a student pulling the fire alarm box inside a school building. And I'm sure that police response will dictate the same response, whether it's true, false, or indifferent.
Okay. Second question I have is, what other schools have you talked to? I mean, you've come to us to talk about it. I remember something in the news about something very similar to this in Londonderry, I think it was.
This is our product.
Oh, okay. Because
Yes.
I was trying to figure out, are you going to like all the districts in the state to try to get this to occur?
Well, we're being invited to many, many of them. But as Chief Silicki had mentioned earlier, we are rolling this out as a statewide initiative in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is the first state in the country to adopt a system such as this to obviously reduce response time and increase communication in the instance of critical incident. So in the state of New Hampshire, where we have probably in excess of 50 communities that are either being onboarded or in the process of that right now. Our hope, obviously, here, based on the commitment of Homeland Security and the governor's office, is that we will have the full state of New Hampshire within 3 years. And that also doesn't, well, I should say that we also are working throughout the country with this product as well.
Yeah, and the reason we really felt it was important to get on one platform is you'll see there's all kinds of different little school alert systems noting out, or community, I shouldn't say school, community notification systems. We're really the only school to police notification system. But we felt it was important in New Hampshire to keep everybody on one platform because, again, just like our radio system, what happened is we spent $24 million building out a great radio system, but then as time went on, things dried up, people bought different radios, now everybody's on different frequencies, they can't talk to each other. So our goal is to keep everybody on one platform, so irregardless of where we're at in the state, we have the ability to communicate to each other, which is key.
Yep, absolutely.
Vice Chair Barnes.
So you have obviously a software that's proprietary, and you're talking about our school district. And when you discussed the situation, the 5 closest law enforcement agents would be notified. So does that mean that integrates with a law enforcement platform?
No, ma'am.
Or are they all on yours?
They'll all be utilizing our software platform, so there's no need to integrate our software with any other existing law enforcement software. This is a standalone software platform.
And are all law enforcement agencies in New Hampshire right now using said platform?
We are working towards that, as I mentioned earlier. So we believe that it'll be based again on the dedication from the governor's office and Homeland Security here in New Hampshire. It'll be about a 3-year process.
Oh, see, I thought that was the school part. I didn't realize that was the.
Well, it goes
law
hand in
enforcement.
hand.
It does.
You can't
Okay.
you can't have one without the other.
Okay.
But I can say that we are more than 50% of the way complete with the state's 911 dispatch centers or county dispatch centers.
Okay, and I might be going to our town reps on this. I just heard an allusion to a grant about this software, I'm assuming. Is that a grant that the schools is doing? Is this or the town, or is it both? Are we co-authoring this grant?
It's primarily a school grant, but we are involved in it. There's a portion that goes to the police department.
Okay. And is that for the purchase price of the product or and the training? Is it all? Will it cover? How much will it cover? I guess I should ask.
The grant is a 50% EMPG grant, 50% match. It can either be a hard match or a soft match, depending upon what the communities feel like. But the grant covers the installation for the first year. It covers all the training for the first year, and then for both the PD and the school. So we encourage the schools and the PD to use the training time that we provide as part of the grant to teach the police officers how to use it and the staff at the school on how to use it as their soft match towards the grant. So in essence, a community, if they did that, could implement this at no cost for the first year.
And then subsequent years, it would be,
There's a recurring fee
Reoccurring
for the
fee.
school district.
I would expect
Yeah.
there would be, okay.
Yeah. And
Any
quite frankly,
thoughts?
per school, it's $1,200.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Per,
and it-
per school building?
Per school building,
Okay.
yeah. But the lieutenant worked a good deal on one of the buildings.
He drives a hard bargain.
It's a big building.
If there aren't any further comments or questions on this specific portion, I'm just gonna X out of this and move on to the last piece very quickly, because I feel it's important, and then,
There's more, didn't know, sorry.
yep,
Oh, yeah.
no, sure.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel
Let's
as though
do
this
that.
is a very
Yes,
important
please.
piece to it. And then I think that it'd be best if we could come back to Q&A and finish up from there, unless you oppose?
No.
All right, fantastic.
That's why I said it's a very robust system.
And there's a lot more to it,
Yeah.
especially to the law enforcement side, that we won't cover for obvious reasons this evening. So let's use a very simple example, maybe even a drastic example, that I'm a dispatcher here at Merrimack PD, and I receive a phone call from a concerned citizen that says, hey, I think I see somebody with a weapon walking across the front lawn heading towards the entrance of the school building. As that dispatcher, I have the ability to see my schools and my officers in my town here right on my mapping system. With that information that I just obtained from that concerned citizen, I could click on this button here and draw a geofence, if you will, around that specific school building or the entire district in order to notify them. This is termed our reverse 911 alert. I am going to draw that box around the specific school I mentioned in release. At this moment, I have a CopSync 911 reverse alert. I can now type in a subject line and a very brief message and click send. And in a few short seconds from the PD, that was about 2 seconds, from the PD, I have the ability to immediately broadcast a reverse 911 alert to the administrators of that school building. Now you can see what it says here. Officer Brandon Flanagan has sent an alert to lockdown. There's a potential threat. As that administrator of just having received this alert, I can join chat and be brought directly into the crisis communication portal and privy to the information and chat dialogues that have transpired in the meantime. We can, however, configure this one of two ways. We can choose to set this up on the background so that every device inside the school building receives the reverse alert. Now, being a second grade math teacher, perhaps, I may not want that threat flashing across my smart board in front of a bunch of young children for obvious reasons, which is why it's so important that this is software, so it is easily configurable, so that we can send this reverse alert to perhaps just the principals, the secretaries, perhaps the guidance counselors, a select few individuals from each specific school building, so that only they receive the alert, and then they can push that alert out throughout the remaining portions of their school building as they seem fit. So we have that ability. Now, think about the applications that this could be used in. I used a very drastic example, but you could use this in the scenario whereas there's a severe weather alert. Maybe the school wasn't aware of it, but the police department was. Perhaps law enforcement is chasing a bank robbery suspect through town, and for proper precautions, just to be safe, we want to lock down the schools. Maybe they're down power lines. Maybe there's a domestic dispute that's spilled over from court, and someone says, hey, I'm coming to school no matter what, and you want to protect your children and just lock it down just to be safe. You have the ability from law enforcement to the school to expedite the time that would have taken otherwise to push this alert out. I know that I've tried to call a school rather recently, and you have to listen to the automated voicemail message system that seems to go on for several minutes. Press 1 for admin, press 2 for the superintendent, press 3 for the secretary, 4 for the principal, so on and so forth. The point that I'm trying to make is that that all takes time, and you can see how quickly that alert was pushed out in a matter of seconds. The point here is when seconds count, lives are in the balance. So that's the CopSync 911 reverse alert.
Brandon,
Yes, sir.
You just showed them the reverse to the school. I know when you did that geofence in the wall, you also showed like a cruiser that was in the area.
Yep.
And you put the fence around both, and that also went to the cruiser, so the police officers also alerted at the same time.
That's correct. Yep, absolutely. Great point, Lieutenant.
So again, the power of the system is, you could look at all your cruises, the county can look at all the county cruises, the state can look at every cruise in the entire state to see where they're at. So, and then, again, get those additional resources as we need to.
So that's the 30,000-foot level of CopSync 911. Certainly, if we had more time, we could go into this a bit deeper. Would like to offer up our time for Q&A if there are any, and hopefully move forward here with your community.
Great, thank you. Any more questions? Mr. Powell?
Chief Doyle, currently, we have radios in all the school buildings, correct?
That's true.
How would that compare to this system, in your opinion, as far as response time?
Well, I think this system would add an enhancement to what we already have relative to the radios that we have in each one of the main offices in each one of the schools. Those radios are there so that it provides the folks in the main office the ability to reach out to us directly and immediately, which is a great option for them given the chaotic situation of an active shooter scenario. However, it becomes an enhancement only if they have the capability and ability to do it. Remember, we only have one radio. So if this incident so far as it's been described as occurring at the other end of the building, they're not going to have that accessibility to the emergency radio that's in the principal's office or in the main office. This sits on every computer in that particular school building, in every school building in town. So any teacher, faculty member, para who may have access to that computer has access and immediate initiation of this response mechanism so that they can get that message out to us. It doesn't take the minute and a half or 2 minutes to get up to E91 to get pushed out to our dispatch or PSAP locator right here in Merrimack, and then push back out to the cars. And then the confusion associated with them being overwhelmed with the 911 calls from every kid and teacher and faculty member that has a cell phone. This goes directly to there, pushes it out to the 5 closest cars. Dispatch then has the ability to reach out to even more if need be without a single word being sent over the air to anybody. It becomes very chaotic and confusing when everybody starts jumping in on top of the radio with all due deference to wanting to do the right thing and help out, but it becomes very chaotic and becomes an incident management nightmare, if you will. This eliminates that, at least in the first few minutes, when those first few minutes are so critical to a response to an area where we have a situation developing. And it eliminates the need to have to continually go back for re-information or to get information that has already been pushed out in a very succinct manner. It tells you where it is, what the school is, where to go, where the threat is, and then by virtue of the chat room that you had seen and watched how that works, more updated information can be pushed back out to those units that are arriving either by the individual who pressed the panic button, if you will, initially, or by the classroom who is 1 or 2 up the hallway. And it really does all that we want it to do and then some. This will not eliminate those radios in those offices. Those radios in those offices are there to stay for a very, very long time, and they're going to be that kind of, that one more level, that redundant backup to anything else that we may be able to provide the different schools in the district. And we think it's important that we continue to improve upon our ability to respond to these kinds of scenarios. Seconds means potentially saving lives. And when we talk about the 15-second countdown, I mean, that's only there so that they can press it and get it to a secure location. They can press it and hit it again, and that's another 15 seconds that we don't have to worry about waiting for that to kind of like come over the air anywhere. So the ability to have such an immediate impact on reporting the information and getting that information succinctly and directly and in detailed manner to the officers that are going to be first to respond, the first 5 officers that this system can reach out and grab, is so critically important to our ability to respond quickly and address and eliminate a situation before it becomes too much of a problem for us.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Barnes.
I did have a couple questions before we
Yeah.
cut off earlier, and
Sure.
one was about the app on the phone. So obviously, every teacher has their normal classroom. Sometimes they do swapping, or they're in other parts of the building. Does it look at the location where they're at, or the location where they're based?
Both. So the teacher or administrator has the option to select or program 5 locations that they most frequently travel throughout the day in. Otherwise, they can use the Use My Location tab on there, which will ping the GPS coordinates of that cellular device or smart device, because most of the smartphones today, if not all of them, are GPS enabled. And that will translate the coordinates of the GPS location directly to a physical address.
So even if they set it off at the post office, you'll know they're at the post office.
That's correct.
That was one of my big questions, because we do have teachers who go to off-site meetings, everything else, so.
And it is, the system is quick and easy. We talk about, my wife's a substitute, so we talk about schools that have substitutes, they come in for the day. As an administrative, you can, when they come in, you can activate them instantly and you can deactivate them in seconds. So that they're not, because they may not be substituting again for another month. So you have that ability to do that on the fly.
Right, so at the PD, the schools, we provide user admin privileges. So you have the ability to maintain who's using the system, when they're using it, if they've used it at all, activate users, deactivate users, add and subtract accounts in real time.
Excellent, thank you.
Mr. Schneider?
To sort of because my question was actually based on what Shannon did, so I would imagine there's probably best practices that you recommend to schools, that they do a mix of computer-based ones versus cell phone-based ones, because like if there's a power outage or something at school where Wi-Fi goes away, you want to have cellular access and stuff like that.
Right.
So I'm assuming part of the training is sort of how to blend all that in, right?
Yep, we recommend that you put this on as many devices as it's feasible to do.
There's no extra cost.
Right, there's no limit to it.
Yeah, one fee covers every device.
Correct, yep. So take advantage of it.
Yeah, no. I mean, when you start to think about it, you say, well, what if you talked about an alert if like power was out, wires are down? Well,
Right.
then Wi-Fi's down. Well, what do you do? Well, then you've got cell phones that do it. So
Exactly.
I would imagine it probably the training and the best practices, the teachers have maybe multiple approaches to take. You know, if they're sitting at their desktop or if they're wandering around with a tablet or whatever, you know, they can
Absolutely.
do
All set. Any other questions? I had one observation and maybe a couple of questions. You talked about the year one installation and training and taking advantage of that. And it seems to me that as part of that, we would probably have a revision to existing emergency policies and procedures, right? You know, the way that we initiate lockdown now looks very different, right, with a CopSync 911 and how that kind of command and control within the building and outside the building works. We talked about what the cost was per year for the software per building. What's the year one install and training cost? We're getting ready for budgeting, and you know, since it's a 50% grant that we, if we do this, that we would pursue, right? We need to have the other 50% available.
The negotiated cost for year one per school building is $1,800.
Okay.
And I believe we did 5 schools, Lieutenant?
Yep.
6, 5?
Well, it was 5 schools, but the upper elementary Massacola are one complex.
That's why I said he beat us up on it.
Yeah, so it would be,
You got the SAU office too out of it, didn't you?
No, I didn't, but,
Oh.
you know,
So that's the 100% cost, so 50% is 900
per building.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
got it.
And
Great.
obviously, as Chief Select mentioned, that doesn't take into consideration the soft match of your time spent
Right.
collectively this evening, things of that nature.
And how does that, how would that handle, if we dealt with the 6 buildings that we have, you know, the superintendent's office, maintenance, and others who should be in the loop and covered? Are they covered under that as well, or does that work
No.
differently?
I missed the question. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Could you repeat the
So
question?
the question was this: if we talk about covering each of our 6 school buildings, our administrators sit in an entirely different building.
Right.
We talked about the notification to the superintendent. So I'm making an assumption that if we cover 6 buildings, it may also be able to notify, people could have the software and be notified regardless of whether they work day to day in those buildings. They're a part of the school system. They would have accounts and be covered and
Yeah, so we would,
notified.
we would do the superintendent's cell phones and stuff like that.
Okay.
Or the superintendent would, we would set up his or her machine
Yeah.
to receive those alerts from any school building from within the district.
Okay,
Yeah.
great,
We could take a bigger pool of individuals and do that as well.
great. Mr. Chevenel.
Yeah, hi, good evening.
Good evening.
As far as ongoing personnel management and cost and whatnot, I'm assuming this kind of resides in the cloud and there's no software for us to, servers, physical servers for us to buy, purchase, or maintain?
It's a cloud-based software product.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
And then, Lieutenant, we've talked about the grant. Is the grant in process? It's been submitted? Are we looking to pursue
Yes,
it?
the application has been submitted.
Okay, so it has been submitted. Okay, excellent. Wonderful. Yes, Mr. Powell.
I apologize. I have just one more question. Are there any districts, school districts in New Hampshire that are currently online and active?
Yep.
And would we be able to get that information at some point just to query their experience? What?
We could get
offline.
We could delegate that information to the lieutenant and the chief if you'd like.
Okay.
And then I'm sure they could pass that along to you folks, unless we'd like to do it directly. I'm flexible.
Either way, I just think it would be important for us to get an idea from the school side how, their experience and such to see how it works.
Sure.
Thanks.
I want to thank you for coming and presenting this solution to us. It certainly seems like it has a tremendous amount of potential for all the reasons that you stated. Chief and Lieutenant, I want to thank you for bringing it to our attention. I think this is yet another example of the strong, solid, proactive partnership that exists between the district and the department. And so, I can't say thank you enough, but this is one of many, many, many examples. So thank you.
I got to say, on our side,
Yeah.
Chief Doyle was like one of the first in the state to jump on this, so kudos to him.
He's progressive.
He is very.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we can leave our business cards if there are any further questions.
We have them. Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that takes us now to item number 7 on tonight's agenda, which is ongoing preparation for the development of the 2015-2016 budget. The first item in that category that we will cover is the board's budget message to the superintendent. At our last meeting, each of the board members provided their individual guidance for the 2015-2016 budget. And as discussed, I took that feedback and consolidated it into one message from the board to administration on the 2015-16 budget. And so I will read that at this time. For the 2015-16 budget cycle, it is the Merrimack School Board's desire that the school district administration budget for a high-quality education for our students while keeping the taxpayer in mind. The board has budgetary expectations which include, but are not limited to, the following. We will remain committed to the school district logic model, which is currently being updated. By supporting the long and short-term goals and objectives in the logic model, we have made continuous progress in the areas of literacy, numeracy, technology, school climate, and safety. We will continue to make data-driven decisions. Financial support will be applied only to those programs and tools that have been proven successful by data. We will maintain appropriate staffing levels based on enrollments and the needs of our students. In support of this, we will use enrollment projections for all grade levels, class offerings, and ongoing district initiatives, such as educator performance evaluation, in making these decisions. We will continue to prioritize projects contained on our capital improvement plan. We will need to consistently plan ahead for various projects so as not to overburden any one particular budget cycle. We take responsibility for our buildings. Required maintenance projects, such as roofing, should be included in the operating budget and not placed on the ballot as warrant articles. We will re-examine the need for replacing the high school track based on its condition, even though it is not on this year's capital improvement plan. We will be forward-thinking with our support of curriculum and technology. It is the board's desire that the district continue to look for efficiencies with our use of technology while maintaining, improving, and expanding our infrastructure and staff readiness in an effort to bring our capabilities as current as possible. This will need to include, but is not limited to, the ability to support evolving standardized testing requirements. We will continue to examine co-curricular programs in an effort to streamline our offerings and strive for equity in per-participant funding between academic clubs and athletics, and provide supporting data as part of the budget. We support administration's efforts to create a level-funded budget and appreciate its associated challenges. Any additions or reductions to staffing and/or programs proposed by administration should clearly include details of the consequences of such actions with the board and its constituency. In summary, we will remain prudent with our expenditures without sacrificing the high quality of our students' education. And so that now takes us to item B, status of capital reserve funds.
Thank you.
Business Administrator Chevenel.
Thank you very much. The capital reserve funds are something we haven't really gone over in total for a while. As you recall, 2 years ago, 2012, 2013, we had 3 reserve funds, the Thornton's Ferry SOAR Capital Reserve Fund, a Mastercola Repair Fund, and one for the athletic fields that had a minor amount of money in it. The 3 of them totaled up to around $67,000, and we dissolved those, and we took that $67,000 and with a follow-up warrant article placed that money into the school district emergency repair fund. So we infused that fund with the 3 that were discontinued. So right now I figured I'd give you a status of what we have. That leaves us with 6 funds that are still active and have balances of money in them. We do have a school asbestos fund right now, even though we're putting the money into the operating budget. We do have money in the capital reserve fund to the tune of around $50,000. In order to get at that money, we would have to put up the asbestos removal as a warrant article and take money out of this capital reserve fund, or we could keep maintaining the budgeting of in the operating budget of asbestos removal, and at some point in time dissolve this fund and either let it go into the general fund or maneuver it into the district repair fund like we did some of the other ones. That was started in 2007, by the way, the asbestos fund. In 2003, we established a remedial reading and math fund that has close to $60,000 in it right now. That was initiated in an era where Title I funding was in jeopardy of going away by the wayside. Title I is basically, supplemental reading for our kids in need, and it was something that was potentially going to be going away as far as funding goes. So we built up a little reserve as far as that goes, if indeed that did happen, and it's laid there ever since. In 2001, we started the Special Education Trust Fund. We did make a withdrawal of around $136,000 from that fund around 3 years ago, I believe. There's $496,000 in that fund right now, and that's a comfortable level that we feel that we should leave it at for the short term and the long term, in case it's needed in the future. Then we have a school roofing fund. We used to put money into a school capital reserve fund, but we've been about just fixing the roofs because of the amount of money we put in the fund. You know, it doesn't make sense to put money in and then take money out. So we've been going along and faithfully doing our roofing projects. Right now there's $1,317 left in, nope, there's $3,428 left in the school roofing fund. The school paving fund, roofing fund was established in 1992. Also established in 1992 was the school pavement reconstruction fund. That has a balance of $1,317 right now, currently. The last fund, the school district repair fund, currently right now, before you sign a document that's going to go around with the manifest, there's $126,000 in that fund. But a few board meetings ago, the school board voted to take $100,000 out to replace the bleachers at the high school. The actual cost of replacement of those bleachers is $98,500. So when I do the math, that leaves this fund with a balance of $27,000. And I think that's a fund that we're looking to keep at or a little bit above $100,000. Seems to be a good level to have as a cushion, as we do have some unexpected repairs that happen from time to time. So basically that's your capital reserve funds you have in a nutshell right now.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Business Administrator Chevenel? Vice Chair Barnes.
When Tom Tussaud was here a few weeks ago, he talked about our asbestos abatement plan as part of the CIP. He did say that there can be surprises of other areas that may have asbestos that just aren't identified. Is that a good consideration for these funds? Or are you looking at it kind of being repurposed for the repair fund and falling it into that?
See, the thing is, if we had an area that we identified, it was a surprise, like I said, asbestos can hide out anywhere, the caulking in a windowsill or something like that.
I think that's what you mentioned, yeah.
Yeah, right. And that would be a surprise. In the school asbestos fund that we have right now, the only means and mechanism to get that out is via warrant article. So it would be best to repurpose that money into the school district repair fund, emergency repair fund, because if you found asbestos, you have to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that would constitute somewhat of an unanticipated expenditure that, once you expose it, you have to get rid of it. So it would meet the qualifications for that. So it would be more of a shift and repurpose, I would say.
So really what you call the long-term funds would be the Special Education Trust Fund and the School District Repair Fund, and the others getting dissolved into mostly the School District Repair Fund based on their
correct.
original purpose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my questions.
And I think one of the things that we'll want to look at as we go through the budget cycle and prepare warrant articles is what our plan is for reconstituting the repair fund to an adequate level, right? We all mentioned at the time when we authorized those funds to be used for the bleachers, which needed to be replaced, that we would need to look at replenishing this and what the appropriate level is. And so what's our approach going to be for actually getting that to a level that's adequate?
Yeah, that's for you to decide, yes.
Yeah. Any other questions? Mr. Schneider.
Yeah, you talked about what we just signed to authorize the expenditure for the bleachers out of the fund. I know at the time I asked about reuse of the materials that the current bleachers are, or at least finding some cost savings from whatever. Was that ever investigated as part of the
Well,
expenditures?
The 98.5 is net of the company taking the material and them reusing it. The price would have been higher if not. We negotiated that into
Okay.
the contract.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to Superintendent.
I just wanted to just add in this particular section, as you prepare for your next meeting, that on November 3rd, it's our intention to bring forward a person who has great knowledge about the track, so that you will have someone here who will do a presentation about the track, who has been overseeing repairs. So you'll have that information, and then we'll use that information to determine what we're going to do in the budget process. So just so you know, that's for November 3rd.
Great, thank you. And now we'll move on to item number 8, Health Trust reimbursement for 2014-2015.
okay. Last year, as you recall, which was a big part of our surplus, was the $1.5 million we received as compensation by the Health Insurance Trust for 2013-2014. A portion of which went to the employees, because a portion of that was their money also. This year, we have received $1,094,000, and that is from the Health Insurance Trust, and a portion of that will be reimbursed to the employees. I'm going through the allocations pretty much line by line right now, and be meeting with the MTA leaders and MESA also to work out a return of their money in the form of a contribution holiday. So we would have perhaps a month where they wouldn't contribute anything into their health insurance. So that's the most easiest way to do that, as opposed to cutting checks, and there's no mandate for us to do that this time. We can handle it any way we want to. So there's $1 million we weren't expecting. So that's it.
Great, thanks. Any questions? Mr. Powell?
Is this going to be an ongoing occurrence every year, that we're going to have to go through this process?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I don't see it being ongoing for the next 4 to 5 years, but until this is all sorted out, perhaps we could see something next year, but I think this is probably it as far as reimbursements go from the Health Insurance Trust. I don't see this going forward another year.
Okay.
That's what I hear.
Because it just seems to be a large waste of manpower on our side to have to go through this each year and figure out manually, pretty much, how much money each person gets back. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're doing the right thing by returning it to the employees, but it just seems like a waste of time that we have to go through this process because of the health trust.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Agreed. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
So we'll move on to item number 9, other correspondence. Is there any correspondence to come before the board? I received an email late last week from a grandparent of a student at the high school regarding their grandchild's situation there. Other than that, I'm aware of no other correspondence. Any comments from the board? Ms. Crowley.
Hi. I just want to speak to I don't want to say issue, but the replacement of the bleachers in the gym. I I understand that the bleachers were returned to us early, which presented some problems for administration and for the janitorial staff, but it's really has affected not only sports teams and gym classes, but student council as well, as we were planning our homecoming pep rally for this previous Friday. But we had to cancel our pep rally, which is very detrimental to the senior class spirit since it's our homecoming pep rally and we're very excited. And we also had to cancel or move our Dig Pink game, which supports breast cancer, and our senior night and teacher appreciation night to the middle school for volleyball. Just in the future, we would hope that the school board would take under consideration students' aspect of life at the high school as these construction pieces are going on. We do understand the importance of them financially and socially, I guess you could say, but just next time we would hope that there would be more thought with the placement of the bleachers.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 10, new business. Vice Chair Barnes.
After our joint meeting with the town council, the concern about tennis courts being decommissioned was addressed. The town, of course, petitioned the state to do that, as we discussed at the table, and that left me with more questions than the answers. From that, I over and over I kept hearing, well, the professionals said you couldn't build tennis courts on this site because of ledge. So I asked for that documentation, and no such documentation could be produced either by the school district or by the town. So based on us pursuing that information. So based on that, you know, I think we want to look at what this site really does do, have real professional assessment of this tennis court basketball site, what it's built on, what should be built on it, what's appropriate use, what longevity would be expected. So I know that we work a lot with Steve Keach, and it would be my recommendation that we would use someone that's familiar with our facilities as Steve, but I think we need a professional rendering of what we have at the end of O'Gara Drive and what's appropriate to put there for the long term. Obviously, this agreement with the town council is up 2018, but in the meantime, there hasn't been a lot of maintenance. There hasn't been a lot of development. So, you know, what do we have on our hands? What will we be getting back? Based on what Steve puts together, if it is a viable site for tennis courts, you know, and this urban legend is really just that, an urban legend, that it's not a suitable site, that we would want to maybe pursue a letter to the state saying that we don't approve of the decommissioning of the tennis courts because it's a perfectly suitable and appropriate site for tennis courts to be built. So, but I don't want to do it without the right information. So that's where I'm looking at us to be able to vet that and find out what really is suitable and viable for that site. From there, we as a board can come up with an appropriate action plan on what's best done with that area. Because right now it's just a declining, you know, depreciating site that doesn't really represent the value that Merrimack offers.
So would you like an agenda item at a future meeting?
I think we're going to need more than an agenda item. We're going to need information from professionals, which is obviously we need Steve Keach's or someone like Steve Keach. It doesn't have to be. I just know that he's very
We would have
well-suited.
to authorize funding, though, so we would want to discuss that before.
That's
we
fine.
move
So we could
forward.
do that as a first step.
Great. Any other new business to come before the board? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to committee reports. Ms. Crowley.
So from last year, we had a vacancy on the Executive Board of Student Council. We didn't have a secretary, and sophomore Kim Ortega was elected by Student Council to fill that vacancy. Homecoming was this Saturday and was the most successful Student Council run dance we have had in years. And it was so successful that we are looking to give out more than one scholarship this year, which is very exciting. Student Congress, which is a student government entity made up of homeroom reps, seasonal sports team captains, and club leaders led by the Executive Board of Student Council, is in the process of changing school policy on bringing out-of-district students to school dances, which is already allowed for junior prom, but we're looking to expand that to student council run dances and sophomore semi, but not senior semi. And then Mr. Wojwoda's government class is looking forward to putting on a mock election in November with a partnership of Student Council. And this will be in accordance with the National Student Initiative to involve students with local and state government. And along with that, the high school administration is looking for students over the age of 18 to volunteer at the voting center in November and encourages them to vote as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any other committee reports? Ms. Guagliumi.
The School District Budget Committee met on the 14th of October. During that meeting, Mr. David Ilg was appointed to fill the vacancy on the committee until the remainder of the term. And also we reviewed the 2013-2014 with Matt Chevenol.
Mr. Schneider.
This is a little late because I was gone for the last meeting, but on October 2nd, we had a Merrimack Safeguard meeting that occurred. At the end, we celebrated the receipt of the grant, which was certainly received well. But that being said, the grant means there's responsibilities. So the team started looking at the action plan we had put together and what the work really means. So over the coming months and coming into early November, we're going to go into some details and lay out our sort of plan of what we're going to do for the coming quarters, get some very specifics. So I hope to, it might be good to have the Safeguard folks come, early, after budget season probably, and sort of share what our plan is and stuff as we sort through it over the next few meetings. So.
Thank you. Mr. Powell.
Well, I got you beat by one day, Andy, for lateness. October 1st, the Healthcare Cost Containment Committee met, and a couple of highlights from that. There's a total of 4 individuals now that have each won a $1,000 Health Trust incentive. So 4 of our employees have qualified and been in receipt of that. And through June, or as of June rather, the district has realized a total cost savings of $19,000 due to the Smart Shopper Compass program. If you remember, that's the program where an employee can contact the Health Trust for recommendations for upcoming procedures and basically shop around for the most cost-effective one. And that's it.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? Vice Chair Barnes.
Parks and Rec did not meet in October due to a lack of quorum, but just as a final plug, the Parks and Recreation Department will be putting on the annual Halloween party Friday the 24th at Wasserman Park from 5 to 8 with a movie screening afterward for the older kids. So that is, of course, a new feature of it. And always our First Robotics has a great haunted house. Raises a great fundraiser for them. So a little cross-promotional plug there. And the skate park is closing, I believe it's the 27th. I'm trying to find the actual date, but I can't find it on my phone quick enough. But I believe it's the 27th for the season. And I have a quick update, or I'll try to make it quick, on the technology committee. I have an update from Nancy Rose. I've not been able to attend their meetings, but we stay in touch and talk in between. The focus at the K through 6 level has been first on the most critical skills and understandings to focus on. And in addition to focusing on the context of those skills, they're focusing on why those skills are important for both the student and the educator. On the technical side, they're looking at keyboarding and understanding keyboard functions, shifting from games to learn model to genuine writing while typing exercises as they advance in the grades, right? So keyboard progression. Productivity software skills, starting with things like Word and Excel in the Office suite, and the tools that are nearly universal in all productivity software, copy, paste, undo, etc. File management and understanding structures, cloud versus local versus network, read-only, etc. And that they'll work to build critical thinking skills, problem solving, persistence, reading for instruction, learning through play,
trial and error, and acceptable risk. On the information side, the focus is on research steps and building up the complexity of the process as they progress through the grades, online databases versus web searching, navigating web pages, evaluating site and sources, which is an extremely important skill. At the middle school level, the committee is looking to begin to integrate first information and technical concepts into the scales work so that they are a meaningful part of the instruction and evidence of learning. And then at the high school level, what they're hoping to do is to use all of those pre-identified skills and identify levels of mastery, right, that ought to be demonstrated when a student reaches those levels. And so they're making very good progress. I think this paragraph sums it well. Ultimately, the focus will be on building staff understanding, facility and comfort, and then increasing rigor and opportunities for more creative expression. We're also going to begin looking at coding and programming at all levels within the district. So that's the Technology Committee update, which now takes us to item number 12, public comments on agenda items. Mr. Hendricks, I ask that you come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Rich Hendricks, 6th Dre Coach Court, and I will address you as chair of the Planning and Building Committee. Excellent report. We certainly look forward to reviewing it, and my committee has some homework to do this week with our meeting on Monday night. Just have to make one point. These people were not responsible for doing any costs on any of these options. I want to make something clear. They used one cost for 2 different offices in 2 different buildings. The original report, we keep seeing this floated around, was $475, and that was almost immediately amended because that did not include the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning upgrade that was not done at the front of the J. Muse. That was not part of the Honeywell. So it was immediately revised to $675,000 to include all that. You can't use that figure for both offices because they're quite different in square footage. In fact, the central office is almost double, and we did not put it into 2 different schools. I'm going to tell you right now, the middle school is going to be a challenge. We've looked at the J. Muse, and all the reasons we kind of came up with, they've kind of, I see a lot of familiar things up there. We will be updating the costs for the new report, certainly, but I just want to make sure people understand that that's a 5-year-old cost as is. We will be updating it, and they've used it, quite honestly, in a very, very good report. I think they're misleading if people are looking at that and thinking the central office is going to cost exactly what the SPED office is, being double the size and being put in 2 different sections. We looked at the same area that the J. Muse was put in. However, we did not look at the middle school because we'll show you, you will virtually change where he's putting it. 3/4 of that school to go from one of the math buildings to the library. You will virtually have to circumnavigate the entire school. Just off the top of my head, but we do have a few months to go over everything. But I want to make sure that price, you know, oh, here it is again. Be very careful that that's their price. We're going to get, you know, with Matt and some opinions, but I just have to make that right off the bat. Thank you.
Thank you. Understood, and I feel all the more happy that we gave a charge to Planning and Building tonight based on that. That takes us to item number 13. We will take a moment to sign the manifest, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn made by Vice Chair Barnes, seconded by Mr. Schneider. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. That motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you, everyone. Good night.